order the Committee of the Whole agenda meeting, Committee of the Whole meeting of City of Summerside for July 4th, 2023, here at 5:03 p.m. Motion for approval of the agenda as presented. Councillor Snow, second. Councillor Glant, all in favor of the agenda? Any opposed? None. We will carry forward with the agenda as set out before you. We acknowledge that the land upon which we gather is unceded Mi'kmaq territory. Abagway is covered by the historic treaties of peace and friendship. We pay our respects to the indigenous Mi'kmaq people who have occupied this island for over 12,000 years, past, present, and future. Any conflicts of interest declarations from any councillors with respect to anything on the agenda tonight? Hearing none, we'll move on to item number 5, which is a transit update from Mike Thususka, Director of Economic Development, City of Summerside. Mike, over to you.
Thank you, sir. So I'm here tonight on behalf of the Transit Committee to just give you an update on the recent transit report that was completed in late 2023, or early 2023, I should say, I apologize, and just give you a sense, which will supplement the report that I sent out. I'll walk through some of the stuff on the screen and then just open up for questions. But in terms of the study itself, it was asked of the consultants to come to the conclusion or not whether a transportation or solution model, if any, to facilitate the movement of people around the community could be housed in Summerside. So that was the premise of the study. The study consultants are actually a transit expert that's got roughly 35 years of experience in the transit business from across Canada, and they actually did the original study in 2021 and was updated in 2023. So just in terms of a quick summary, the report the first report was circulated in 2021. Obviously things changed since then, so we had it updated in 2023. We looked into many of the things in regards to the benefits of transit over and above our current system, including social mobility, economic, and community. We were also benchmarked against 6 other jurisdictions with similar populations, but also benchmarked Charlottetown, given the fact that their operator runs the Charlottetown operation as well. The conclusion of the report was our current system has a poor level of service. We get what we pay for, obviously, low ridership, limited service hours, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The bottom line is we rank the lowest in all the matrix analyzed for municipalities reviewed in terms of our current system. The scan also indicated that it is feasible for small municipalities to operate better transit services that's currently in Summerside, and the projections was we could achieve 45,000 rides per year with a much better system. And so the report concluded to improve transit, if that is a priority for all the reasons identified, then a step change in investment is necessary to effect a change to routing and service levels. So basically rewriting our total transit script. I won't go into every bullet on this page because it's covered off in the report, but as part of the review, we looked at 3 very basic premises: mobility and social impacts, health and environment impacts, and the economic impacts with having transit within your community, and all show in various forms or fashion, obviously, the positive impacts that it can have in those 3 sectors within our economy. And so it turned out to be a very positive impact. So the group looked at a couple different options, and I'm just going to give you a few definitions just so that folks can wrap their heads around. So we explored what we call a fixed route, which, as the name implies, a bus travels from point A to point B on a defined route without deviation and runs on that on a set schedule. On demand is a shared rides response service, usually in low demand areas, does not follow fixed routing. Instead, passengers pre-book trips and vehicles are routed dynamically to pick up the passengers and bringing them to, I'll call it the fixed route, which is what the third system is, which is a hybrid system providing for both fixed route and on-demand services. The concept tries to balance consistency across your service area. In our case, the report concluded that a hybrid system could be created for Summerside, and then they looked at a couple of different areas, including in Slemon Park and not including Slemon Park as part of the transit process. So in essence, this is what the consultants have recommended, the red being the fixed route system, which includes Summon Park, and anything in yellow would be on demand. And so the system would utilize a 2-bus system basically with 2 buses on standby, and would run weekdays from 8 a.m. to 5:45 p.m. And on-demand services would run basically around the same time up until 6 p.m. with an average fare of $2. So in the consultant's estimation, this is where the red line or gray area is where the majority of the users would hop on, hop off the transit, and to ensure that we service the whole community, that the on-demand service would be seen as part of the yellow section as well. So that, in essence, your whole community would be serviced. In terms of bus infrastructure, we were challenging, and I think the consultants concluded, if Summerside's obviously been known to be different, and so the bus fleet that we've identified as the pathway going forward will be an all-electric 30-foot low accessible transit bus, looking at a total of 4 to 5 vehicles, obviously 2 in operation, 2 as backup. It's recommended that the city would acquire and own all the infrastructure and set aside storage, maintenance hubs, set routes, frequency fares, manage branding, et cetera, but that the service be contracted out to a private sector to run the actual system. So they would be responsible for operations, routing, maintenance, and cleaning as part of that. And that chart down below just kind of gives you an example of how the buses would flow throughout the day. In terms of a capital cost summary, in order to implement what they're talking about, as we suggest, the actual electric buses would be approximately $1.6 million. And then the associated accessories, obviously, to run the system, including charging stations, shelters, signage, would be around $1.7 million as a capital cost. I'll talk a little bit more about ways in which we could reduce that in terms of a burden to the city directly. And then operational cost summary, they're estimating the operational cost of transit Summerside would come in around $500,000 a year with an estimated ridership of 50,000. They guesstimated that $100,000 would be fare revenue. We would also obviously look to the province for a provincial subsidy for an operational, and that's to be determined in terms of the actual number. We are in discussions with the province. And so the remaining costs would be less those numbers between fare revenue and provincial subsidy would be the city's investment in transit. In terms of possible fundings for both what I'll call hard infrastructure costs and soft costs, there's a number of various fundings that are out there. The Zero Emission Transit Fund is available for both hard and soft costs. The Canada Community Building Fund, formerly known as the gas tax, would support hard costs. There's also incentives for medium and heavy duty zero emission vehicles program, which goes towards supporting of vehicles. There's obviously OCOA, which has an innovative communities fund for operational support. And then as we've done with other projects, we could look to the FCM for funding for low interest loans if that was indeed necessary. All these particular programs have, I'll call them caps, anywhere from 50 to 80% funding towards capital expenditures. Some of them are, some of them aren't. We haven't 100% flushed that out just because we wanted to confirm a couple other things prior to moving forward. So we also actually reached out to a number of other municipalities that are running both traditional transit, hybrid transit, just to get their feedback. A lot of them agreed with some of the conclusions that were in the report, and I didn't supply them as part of this, but I also asked the consultants, a question was, define for us kind of the high level risks here if the city was to move forward with this, just so that we make sure that we know what we know and don't know what we don't know, and try and avoid that. So the plan that they came out with looks to service our busier corridors and then connections with fixed routes to avoid kind of having a bus with nobody on it, which is part of what they're trying to achieve. And it strikes a balance between operating this fixed route and a relatively direct, I'll call it on-demand service, where you're not wasting resources by servicing areas that aren't highly utilized or highly populated. especially when it comes to the business. It's important that demand builds slowly because it's hard to change people's habits, and I think this was really emphasized, I guess, against our current model to where this model goes to, and that's why the consultants have kind of narrowed in on us, you know, kind of taking control and managing the system and making sure that we get out there and to have some patience in terms of trying to build the service, because it's going to take a couple of years to do that. Flexibility obviously is important given our community, and then making sure where we've lacked in the past is in terms of our contract and our relationship with our service provider, to make sure that you look after all those issues. So that, in a nutshell, is kind of where we sit at transit, and happy to answer any questions that I can, if I can do that.
I just have one quick question there, Mike. On the list of potential funding, I didn't see was the Rural Transit Fund captured there, the capital project stream?
It is a possible funding stream, but we weren't 100% sure we were going to be eligible for it. We'd have to get further clarification from the fund itself, based on their population definition.
Right. Mike, the only, mine is similar, but the Canada Community Building Fund, formerly known as the gas tax, I think, you know, to rely on that is not something we want to do, because I know that each year that is probably looked at very favorable for a lot of the projects that we do in the city. So I think we need to look harder there. So thanks.
Yeah, I think the consultants are suggesting that the zero emission transit fund would probably be our best bet for the hard costs. Operationally, in most cases, is going to come provincially. So those are your two targets, but they did want to suggest to us that there are other options available, but not that they would be carved in stone.
Curious, Mike, what I sit on the transit committee, but next steps, what are we looking for in this setting right now, and what are we, obviously, I feel we are in a spot where we can improve. That's why I think Councillor Ron, also a fellow transit committee member, felt that this was a possible way forward, and I still strongly believe it's a way to help grow our city in a number of ways. So what is the next steps? Where are we at?
So next steps is this week we have a meeting with the province to determine where kind of the scope is in terms of what support we can expect. That's our first step. Once we get that back, we'll kind of have a better sense of what operationally that investment to the city would be, and then the application to move forward with, I'll call it the capital acquisition phase of the transit. So those are two logical next steps, but obviously the full report plus this to digest and determine whether, you know, transit is something that we as a municipality should be getting into.
Just a question, Mike, and I should know this and I don't. How much do we subsidize right now or put in?
$23,000 a year is what we currently subsidize Trias.
Hello, Mike.
Hello, Justin.
Do we know, I guess two-part question, do we know the amount that the province subsidizes Charlottetown? And if we do, is it realistic to expect the same, maybe not in the same number, but the same, maybe is it a percentage of their population or a percentage of their transit infrastructure? Like, is there a reason that we can expect similar funding?
I think it's 85,000 years.
I'd like to get back to you on that question later in the week. Certainly, we have in our own minds a threshold of what we think we can expect from the province based on what they're doing in Charlottetown. But I would like to think that we have a more compelling case for transit, and certainly on, I'll call it the zero emission front, where we think we can position this transit system in a lot more favorable light. So if you allow me, a few more days, I can get back to you with that number. Thank you.
I just had a really quick question. So the map, if you go back to your map where you said that in the yellow, if it was needed, right? How do you know, like, are people calling in saying that
No,
there's
so
area needed?
if-
Sorry.
If
I
we
wasn't clear.
remember back to 2021,
Yeah.
we did a number of community surveys and uptake in by area in the city. And certainly, there was some known demand there, but the core demand was in that routing outline because it tracks obviously your major employers, your major services. But I think part of the committee had suggested that we don't want to leave the whole community out for the sake of one corridor. So that's how we came up with this hybrid model, where our hope is that at some point in the not too distant future, that those red lines actually span out more into
Yep.
the yellow. That would be the ultimate goal.
Right, because the development, like, I'm just thinking of my portion that I represent in the east end, it would be a lot more than it was in 2021, right?
Yeah,
with
and as I look at a developer who's developing significantly in that
Yes.
part of the town, we would love to offer transit, and I'm sure
Yeah.
he would love to have transit as part of his service offering to the residents that are leasing
Perfect.
there as well.
Okay,
Absolutely.
So it'll just be looked at as it,
Yep.
okay.
So Mike, just go back to that, our TF fund, can you explain to me what the population numbers you're looking at, just so I get that straight? I thought we were looking at the rural transit fund, the project, the capital stream, that would provide 80% capital cost if we were eligible?
Yeah, so.
So what, like what, I thought you guys have been having that conversation with,
We were having more of a conversation with the Zero Emission Transit Fund. I think as part of the contract with this consultant, it's their responsibility now, if council approves us to move forward with, I'll call it capital inquiry in terms of financial support, is there to scan the landscape to all programs that are available to us. The Rural Transit Fund, there was a little bit of skepticism, but they need to check it out. But we need to check that out based on the fact that we're moving forward or not moving forward, right? So,
the skepticism was from Dylan?
population, yeah, it was a population issue.
So I thought we asked FPIM. Anyhow. Okay, I guess.
Irrespective, they would
Yep.
exhaust all available funding that's available currently through the federal government, plus look at all the stacking options under that fund as well. ICIP was another fund that came off the list because we know that ICIP is exhausted in PEI.
Yeah, I just know the rural transit fund is open now, provides up to $5 million for capital costs,
Yeah.
80% federal contribution, so it's
And we
probably
did
better.
check in- We did check into that, my understanding, and
We
we
do.
fall under the rural, we would qualify based on the criteria is what I'm,
Yeah, I just wonder if we don't
Yeah.
qualify, we do, I just feel like,
it's a big difference.
I'm kinda curious, I thought we had some idea that we would
Certainly,
qualify.
we can confirm that within the next 24 hours, any one of these funds.
So again, should we be looking for some direction to continue down the path of funding and, otherwise we just wasted 10 minutes of our time, so, I think we should come out of here with some sort of direction on what's next step. It causes some work for staff, and I know there's lots going on, but if we're gonna sit here now, then we should be at least coming out of here with some action items.
What, Gordon, did you wanna?
Well, I was just gonna say, the staff's intention is to continue to follow up on the funding opportunities and work with the consultant, unless council says different. We're starting to get some ballpark ideas of what capital costs might look like and what the operational costs might look like, and staff are gonna follow up with the province, as Mike said, on, potential operating cost, subsidies, so the plan is to continue down the path. We were not gonna commit council to any expenditures, obviously, without coming back and having further discussion, but
So we, just to sort of repeat what you just said, we're gonna look to make sure that we're able to qualify for those fundings, what funding options are available, and then bring that back to council for a decision on, it would be into next budget year or whatever, but without having numbers about Yeah, without having any numbers, it's hard for council to make any decision other than just listen to the presentation.
You know your investment's gonna be in and around the ballpark of $2 million less whatever federal subsidies you get on the capital side. And then operationally, they're projecting an investment of $500,000 less ridership / operational subsidy. So those are the two unknowns that we have right now. It's tough for us without direction to say, okay, start applying to these funds to see what we can get, because they have to also qualify what they consider eligible expenses. And then we'll also do the same with the province to say, what can we expect from an operational standpoint? We can start to have those discussions if that's the will of council, for sure.
I personally, I'll just speak for myself, we've invested money in a report, we've done a lot of work as a committee getting together. You've presented to us a couple times. I think we do need to make some sort of decision coming out of here so we can either continue on the path or shelve it. I'd hate to shelve it at this point knowing there's possible significant funds available. And I do think the province needs to step up on their end to, you know, reflect similar to what they're providing Charlottetown with in regards to grant money. So I think there's lots of options there right now, and with us growing, I think it's the perfect time to look at it, so.
I think we have to continue on the process because we haven't got enough information to say no right now, you know. I really think that we need to know, you know, what the funding is and what council is going to be, you know, what we're going to be looking at. So until we have those numbers, I don't think we can, we got to go further before we make a decision on what we're doing. Thanks.
Now, could we send this to Finance Committee within the next 2 weeks to go through the funding options and come back to council with something? I guess we're in this funny space where I'm trying to figure out what exactly where we're at, so.
Yeah, and we'll work with.
Well, we kind of guess we just need to know.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we can apply to everything as well, and if we don't have to do anything, even if you're successful, I suppose. But just to get a better idea, because $2 million is a lot different than $500,000 or whatever for council.
I think, you know, finance and economic development have enough information that we can work together to try and come back with something.
Yeah, I think it was philosophically, we could certainly start applying for these programs, but if we as a group and council weren't embracing transit, then that's why we stopped, I guess, where we're at today.
Yeah.
So if the feeling is that transit is a needed service in our community to help in our growth and tied to economic development growth and workers and everything else, then the consultant's prepared to help us move forward with kind of seeing what kind of response we can get, at least on the capital side. The provincial side would be all us anyway, in terms of, and that meeting is this week we're having with them, so.
Okay.
Okay, I guess we just need to hear from councillors. If you want to go ahead or not, especially the ones who haven't said anything. Corey, I think you said you want to go ahead. Bruce, you seem like you want to go ahead and get this to Finance Committee and get them working with Economic Development. Councillor Duran?
As a co-committee member and as a resident and as a councillor, I definitely support moving ahead, yeah.
I definitely support move ahead.
First time I turn my microphone on. I would also support going ahead.
Yeah, move ahead.
Okay, so we have direction, and can we be back at council meeting in 2 weeks? Is that doable? Try and keep this moving along. Again, I know some of these things are open. I don't know if it's gonna take a month or
I mean,
2 weeks or.
Staff will work with the consultant as fast as we can. I doubt we'd be ready to have anything back in the next 2 weeks, but
That would be tight.
that would be. And again, the challenge for council is like so many files, right? You direct the staff to go out and do some work and bring back some information, and there are points that become normal either stop or go points, and tonight's presentation was one, to bring you up to speed on where the ballpark numbers may be. You guys have all, or most of you have been through budget discussions before. If we choose to introduce a new service like transit at that type of operational cost, then we'll have more tough, significant decisions to make at council time. So I guess I just want to reiterate the direction that staff's hearing is to continue on investigating and seeing the funding options from the province and from some of the federal sources. But again, we're not committing you, and you're not committing tonight to full steam ahead with the transit system. It's full steam ahead, continue to investigate, right?
And then maybe Councillor Snow, as Chair of Economic Development, you can work, maybe attending the Finance Committee meeting to go over that and come forward. I think it's probably best if this comes from Finance Committee, having looked, we're just talking about the dollars now, everyone's theoretically in support. Maybe we can set up that process. They meet monthly, they met today, so we'll be meeting in 1 month's time and then can come to the appropriate meeting of council. Is that okay, Gordon? Good? Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Now we'll move on to item 6, which is sidewalks. Councillor Morrison asked to put this on the agenda. Councillor?
Yeah, I just, so we have some nice new sidewalk out in Ottawa Street East. I guess probably east of McCune Road towards Gillespie or in that direction. And before I make too many comments, I want to make it, people to understand that it looks great. It was well done by the contractor, so it's no, I'm not taking shots at him or anything like that. I think they do a great job, and anytime you watch them work, it's just, everything's great. And the way they handled the traffic too during all the construction was really, it was well done. So I've often had this question posed to me long before I got on council, but more so just in the last month or so when that construction was stuff going on. And it has to do mostly with sidewalks that are, I would say, like, they're inside, like, you know, anywhere from 4 to 12 feet probably from the road, so they're in off the road a little bit. And when you look across them or walk down them or do all this stuff anyway, they go across a lot of driveways and a lot of parking lot exits or entrances or whatever you want to call them. And in some cases, or a lot of cases, when they go across those, so they dig out perfectly good asphalt. So they take the time to cut the asphalt, take the asphalt out, probably dig down somewhere between 18 or 24 inches, I don't know what the rate is, and bring in the proper stuff to put underneath it, the sub or the base, and then pour the concrete. And a lot of these people aren't happy about getting their asphalt dug up, nor do they want the concrete going across their parking lots or their driveways or because it causes other problems with snow removal, when equipment hits it, if there's if frost moves anything, or if the asphalt drops down a little bit after they put it in around the sidewalk. It's hard on equipment, and then they chip away at the concrete and they do issues and stuff like that. So I often wondered, and the question was often posed to me, why do we go across driveways and parking lots when there's perfectly good and spend all that money? Where in my mind, if you took, you know, if you went out Water Street East and up McCune Road and out South Drive and probably lots of other places, and Summerside's not the only place that does this, but there's a lot of poured concrete across driveways and parking lots, and that if you spent the same amount of money, we'd probably have another half a dozen or more streets completely done with sidewalks in Summerside, and we're putting it in places where people don't want it. Now, not everybody, but I know there's some that certainly don't want it, and we're opposed to it, and probably had discussions with the city saying they didn't want it, but they were getting it anyway. So I wonder why the reason the city or we do that, I guess is my question, if someone can answer that. It's probably been asked here before numerous times, but being new, I'll ask the question again.
Sure, I'll take a first stab at answering that, and then I may ask Aaron McDonald, Director of Technical Services, if he wants to comment as well from a technical perspective. But I mean, long story short, we provide a right of way for people to walk on as that right of way goes through parking lots that we don't control the maintenance of. In some areas, not in all, but in some areas, hazards do get created over time. And if you think of, somebody's walking down the sidewalk, we have the sidewalk, we're inviting them to travel along there. From the city's perspective, it's about being able to control the right of way that we're sending people down and control the maintenance of that. So in the past, some areas, again, not all, where we've gone through asphalt parking lots, there have been numerous trip hazards and that sort of thing. So, from that property owner's perspective, at least in one perspective, it's decreases their liability when the city goes in and creates that continuous concrete sidewalk throughout. If there's an issue with the maintenance or a trip hazard on that concrete sidewalk, that's gonna be our issue, not somebody has a trip and fall, that's gonna be on us, not on the property owner. In saying that, understand that it can cause inconvenience to property owners, and numerous have raised that concern with us in the past, so it's certainly something that we take under consideration. I think that's the answer. I don't know if it's the good answer or the right answer, but that's, Aaron, I don't know if you have anything to add to that. That's the answer from a liability perspective, for sure.
Yeah, what Gordon stated was what we recapped, I think, a couple of times in the last few years, where we had questions from people that came across, and that was the majority of it. But it was also, I have to go back and look what we came back with 2 years ago, but it was clearly defined, and for a vehicle that was turning into, whether it be a driveway, here's the exact path where you could anticipate having pedestrians walk across. If it was a parking lot, pedestrians then are guided or aligned that here's the path they should be taking. And also, if someone's turning off Water Street East, for example, they're pulled in, they're going to know that there's a chance of pedestrians being on that line. So it was basically limiting the area where they could have points of conflict to say that's where it was. It was basically highlighting that to the motorists as well. And in some instances, they're also using in the new sidewalks going across, have been in the past years, was to more clearly define the entrance and exits into wider or larger parking areas, so that even for vehicles coming in, whereas if I'm turning into a large lot, I know I'm turning in a narrower spot that's defined now by sidewalk, a higher section of sidewalk, so we're narrowing up, giving them standard access to know that I'm pulling into a big parking lot. That's when I expect someone to be coming out or not coming out. So it was a combination of some of the existing driveways were in, as Gordon says, not all cases, but we're finding they're in poorer shape, and that's the clear path that we defined for pedestrians to be walking, but also the vehicles turning off. That they can expect pedestrians, and the final point was to clearly define entrance and exits out of really wide or excessive accesses. There may be more, but that's all I had prepared. We can
No, and thanks for those answers from both. So I just wonder about that, because we're always looking for money or ways to, and I just think it's a way to save a few dollars and then put that effort and work and concrete somewhere else, and where it's probably going to be appreciated a little more. And because the other thing that I wonder about, so we do driveways and we do the parking lots, but when you walk across an intersection, they can paint 2 white strips and you can walk across it, or there's nothing there at all, and we walk across those streets that I assume that we own or the city owns in most cases, and we don't put sidewalks there. So I'm having a little trouble understanding why we need it on driveways and parking lots, but we don't have to have it at intersections.
Yeah, I guess, well, the question of whether we need it or not is certainly a question that could be debated, right? It's about, by putting the concrete sidewalk through, it creates a safer traveling path for the pedestrian, and theoretically decreases the city's exposure to trip and fall and hazards, claims and such. Why they're not through the streets? Well, the streets, again, we control the streets, we own them, so if there are maintenance issues in the crosswalk areas, theoretically, we control being able to fix those on our own timeline, versus a sidewalk or, a walkway that's through a private companies or businesses' driveway. We don't control the maintenance on that. But it all, I mean, at the end of the day, it comes down to standards and part of the question comes down to standards and what standard do we want, and do we want to cover the cost of that standard or not, right? So certainly a discussion that we can have.
Yeah, I think it's anyway, I think it's just a way that we could save a few dollars on some of those things, especially where people don't want them maybe, and give us more, we can go to do, some streets. I'm sure, like I say, there'd be a kilometer or two of that stuff around town, and, you could divide that into 3 or 4 roads that are half a kilometer long, and people would have a sidewalk, and they'd be real happy about it. And just might be a way to move some money around or some concrete around and save here and put it somewhere else, or, anyway, it's just a thought. And the only other thing that, a few of the other questions I did hear out there, or that in that area, and I've seen it before, is, and I get the idea of controlling the access points a little better and stuff, but when they put the sidewalks in, and then sometimes they hump them up a little bit where they don't want you to drive and stuff, it makes it a little narrow, especially for people who are receiving tractor trailers and stuff coming in off of Water Street, and it makes it a little tougher for them to get in and out of the parking lots and drop off their goods or supplies or whatever. So anyway, it's just some thoughts. I just wanted to bring it up, talk about it a little bit to make sure, just express my feelings on it and some of the feedback I've been getting for some people. And like I say, I've heard it for years, not only because they did this when I heard it, but often in my former life when I worked for the city, I constantly had that question posed to me, why do they do this? So, well, I don't really know, but so I'm finding out tonight. So anyway, maybe in the budget stuff this year, we can rob Peter and pay Paul if it's possible. If it's not something that we have to do, it's just something we can look at. Thanks for your answers.
Yeah, I think it's worthy of further discussion, because I know I've asked that question before, and I look, and I know what you're talking about, and whether it's 50 or 75 feet, maybe we could have went 50 or 75 feet further this year with sidewalk. I have no problem with them doing the driveways. I just question around some of the parking lots. So anyway, we can chat about that later too. So.
Yeah, and not to drag it out, but I just wanted to make it clear that the ones I'm talking about are the ones that are in off the street. If you have, in my mind, if you have a sidewalk like going up Granville Street, so you got asphalt and then concrete because it's the sidewalk, then I have no problem with it going straight up and going wherever, or through everything. But when it's recessed, 10 or 12 feet inside on someone's land, and yeah.
So then how does council want to move forward? I don't want to just sort of leave that hanging. Do we want to request staff to come back with recommendations to keep it the same or to make changes?
Yeah, from my point of view, it would be interesting to hear the recommendations or the views or something. And maybe it's something we have no choice. Maybe that's the way it has to be done. Maybe there's hard and fast rules that when you're pouring concrete or pouring sidewalks, these are the, this is the criteria, this is the way it's done. So if that's what it is, that's what it is. But if it's just something that we're doing and we don't have to do, then I'd like us to look at it and maybe save a few dollars, on the time and the money and the concrete and the digging and the putting back in. And, we could probably put in more concrete in a few other places or sidewalks where they're looking for it.
I think staff can bring back some more information on the topic to committee as a whole at either the next meeting or a meeting before the next budget discussion to have a more fulsome discussion around it. The answers tonight were just off the top of our heads based on, what we know.
Yeah.
But we'll put a more fulsome report back to council, and council can committee can make a recommendation, and council can kind of decide which standard they want to move forward with. And we'll incorporate that into next year's budget.
Good with all council?
Good.
Okay. So we'll get the report back. Great. Next, moving on, item 7, this is universal basic income. So when I was at, 2 things happened here. One, I was at the Atlantic Mayor's meeting approximately a month ago. I spoke about that before council. At that meeting, I was made aware that the previous mayor had made a commitment to the Atlantic Mayors to bring forward a resolution on universal basic income to council. That hadn't happened. and I don't know exactly what the time-in was. So that commitment had been made, so I wanted to follow up with it. Around the same time, I had a meeting with Marie Burge and Wayne Easter from the Cooper Institute with regards to the same topic. They provided me with a resolution of which a similar resolution or the same resolution has been adopted in a number of municipalities across Atlantic Canada, including Halifax, Moncton, Pictou, Antigonish, I think, Charlottetown. I committed to just bring it to council. I can kind of give you a background if anyone is interested. Universal basic income would be an income support program for anyone under a certain income level in Canada, funded by the federal and provincial government. So nothing directly to do with us, except it would obviously, like everything, impacts our citizens. So all I wanted to do today is I put the draft resolution, a sample resolution in your package. I simply wanted to put it before you, council, to know if you wanted to have a full resolution go to the next council meeting for you to vote on or not. I honestly don't want to take this as a resolution if council's not interested. So I wanted to just gauge your interest. If you are, we'll put it on as a resolution and you can vote on it at the next council meeting. If you're not, that's fine. Totally up to you. But I had made a commitment to follow up on that previous commitment. So just looking for any feedback from council if you want this on the next council meeting as a resolution. Councillor Snow?
I have no issue with you following through and bringing the resolution to the next council meeting.
If I may, Your Worship, I'm just wondering where you had indicated that it is a provincial federal jurisdiction. If we as a municipality, does that tie us to any type of a commitment if we do a resolution?
Yeah, as far as I understand, there's no commitment from a municipality here. The commitment is to write a letter to the Prime Minister, PI members of Parliament, Premier Prince Edward Island, calling on those orders of government to work towards developing a guaranteed livable basic income to eradicate poverty and homelessness and ensure everyone has sufficient income to meet their basic needs. So the work for us would be letter writing. Any other just maybe if two more councillors say we want to go ahead. So I got it.
Go for it.
Go for it. Okay, so we'll put it on the resolution. I just asked you all to read it before, and then you can vote at it at the next council meeting. Thank you very much. Move on to item number 8, which is an update on next phase of Starlite subdivision. This is put on by Councillor Adams. Councillor?
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. So I just wanted to do a quick little update on the next phase of Starlite subdivision. We've had a few hiccups. I'm hopeful that we're working through everything now, but just sort of wanted to go over a few of the things that maybe a review might be needed in regard to like some of the things that might make it go easier for the developer and as well on the staff side. I should start out by saying that so the Starlight subdivision, we're in phase 3 now, and everybody are going into phase 3. And when I was over on the weekend speaking with a few of the residents, they're extremely happy. It's, I mean, it is a semi-construction site right now, but the ones that have been there are very content, and it is a high-quality product. I guess what is coming forward is that every developer operates differently, and I think what developers are seeing is that because every developer is operating differently, it might be sort of hard to, at the city level, to change paths and like, okay, we're dealing with this developer now, they operate this way. Okay, we're dealing with this developer now, they operate this way. So there was sort of a question if we do need a person not in the middle, but a person that can sort of weave the way for these things to go a little bit easier on the developer side, leading up to the staff side. For example, I'll just say 95% of the city's pipes are currently underground. So we got to hold up with this bit that phase 1 and 2, the pipes were underground. And Robert Duffy is here, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, Robert. Underneath. Hard surfaces, right. So, but in this phase, it changed. So, and you also had somebody do your drawings for the other phase, and it had to be a different person for this one. And the drawings were the same, but they were from 2 different designers, and one was approved and then one wasn't. So then it came back that it was approved in error. So it's just those little things that lead to confusion, because when you're working, it's the staff, it's the designers in the middle, and then there's the developer. So when there's the 3 parties, do we need somebody in there that works with the designer and the developer so that our staff are doing their thing and can remain neutral and not matter what developer it is? It might help with the communication process as well between the staff and the developer. Some developers are very hands-on and it's them. Some developers, you have to go through their office. So one communications person on our end, would that be helpful? I guess there's just sort of a need to maybe review the whole process and how it rolls out, because as we've seen in the news today, like we're seeing growth like we've never seen before, and we're wanting to open up hundreds of acres for development. So we're going to be seeing even different developers from our usual developers coming in. So we want to make it as smooth as possible for everybody. So I guess out our way currently, we are, we're doing R1 right through to R4 right now, and everybody is living quite contently together, and it's in a small area. So we want to make sure that the developers keep coming and keep wanting to help us grow our city. So I'm not sure if this is, like, Robert, you can add what I'm missing, but I just think it's something that we really need to, like, maybe sit down with staff and developer and hash out a good plan moving forward that will be less stress on everybody involved. Does anybody have any?
What if we, similar to the last conversation we had staff come back, go through the process they currently go through with developers on a larger scale, so we have a really good understanding, and then we can dive into ways to, or with our departments on ways to streamline or make things run smoother if that's possible. To your point, ideally the process runs smoothly for developers, residents, everybody. So I think it's worthwhile for council to have a really, really good understanding of these processes for residents, for developers, and our department staff. Yeah. So I think that's a worthwhile process.
Yeah. Robert, did I get the gist of pretty much everything that needs to be? It's totally not my area of expertise, so I.
For those who don't know me, Robert Duffy, I'm one of the partners in McDuff Development. We've completed 3 successful residential developments since 2015. I think just rough numbers, 150 duplexes and 50 single-family homes. I agree with, Councillor Adams. I think it's important to keep the developers coming to the city of Summerside and keeping an open communication chain with staff and the developers' engineers. In this case, our engineers are from Halifax. They're used to doing stuff in Nova Scotia for the Halifax regional city and Truro and whatever. They're a very excellent team of engineers. So I do think there was communication problems within the 14 or 16 months from when the submissions were first presented to tech services. Some very vital information came late in the game. Some of the submission reviews were very sparse. These guys in Halifax are used to doing like 1 or 2 submissions get everything marked up and get her shovel ready. In this case, it didn't happen. A lot of the submissions come back very vague. Stuff wasn't marked up the way it should have been, and some very crucial information came late in the game, which knocked us off, you know, a May 1 start. So I'm not blaming anybody. We're as much to blame that I didn't stay on top of it. I guess for the next phase, just to help carry along there, we did jump through phase 2 and go to phase 3 because it is more multi-unit apartment buildings, 8 plexes and 6 plexes, which seem to be a higher demand. So we have phase 2 in the cards to go, but we jumped from phase 1 to phase 3. So yeah, just to move things along, I think in the next development, I think it's important to have somebody that's independent of the developer and city staff, and keep the communication chain open, and make sure that the development goes through as quick as possible.
Other members of council, comments, thoughts? In terms of a work forward, then, Councillor Adams, you're looking for sort of a review of development standards from the city's perspective?
Yeah, maybe if we just, maybe you could go back to technical services committee, and they could, you know, sit down and maybe take this project as an example of, you know, get Robert's side of it, get the staff side of it, and then see what matches up, where things sort of went astray, and then tighten those areas up for future development.
So basically have an official plan.
Sorry, what?
Basically have an official plan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Robert, just, Carrie had made a comment, or Councillor Adams, I should say, made a comment about phase 2 was underground, and
Sorry,
what
I misspoke there.
Yeah, so all your site services in the city, like your water, your storm, your sanitary, you know, and was it right 60, 70 years ago to put them underneath hard surfaces? Probably not for when you go to upgrade that.
Right.
But in certain cases, when you have a development like phase 3 that has a lot of turns and curves, to come back and say, you know, what you did in phase 1 is no longer accepted, it was accepted in error. Now we want everything in the green, right? None of your infrastructure is to fall underneath any piece of a curb. So what it really translates in, every lot could end up having a manhole, you know, and
In the lot.
every lot. Well, when you're going around a turn, in order to keep everything in the green, you're literally dropping a manhole every 30, 50 meters to get around that turn. So not only does it add an extraordinary amount of expense to the developer, this maintenance of these manholes for the city staff over the years is going to get expensive. Like we're building the infrastructure and turning it over to the city. So to say that, you know, your phase 1, your site services was underneath pavement in places, that was accepted in error. But we got that information very late in the game and had to pretty well go back and redo all our site services, our engineering team, and start over.
I guess my question is it additional cost, or the fact that you didn't know and that was a holdup? Is it additional cost to put it in the green rather than on the hard surface?
It sure is.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks.
In this case, I think it added, between storm sewer and sanitary manholes, I think 16 or 18 new structures, which in phase 1, when we went around a turn, the pipe was allowed to cross underneath the roadway.
Right.
So when you say that was accepted in error, and now you have to go around the turn in the green, I guess in the initial phases, it would have been great to get that information, but to pay engineers to design a complete subdivision based on the phase 1 concept, and then to find out, you know, a month before you're ready to start your construction, that all that was accepted in error, start over again, it adds a lot of time, which in a seasonal place like PEI, you can't get back. So we're going to do a complete review with Highland Geomatics when this is completed, shovel-ready for construction, and we will present it to council.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Robert.
Thanks.
Thank you, Robert. Thank you, Councillor Adams. Anything further on that matter at this point in time? Last item up here before we adjourn our committee of the whole agenda is the public committee appointment criteria that I asked to put on here. I've spoken about this before. I know everyone loves to hear me talk about committees. One of the conversations we had previously was our current procedural bylaws essentially empower the mayor to establish any ad hoc committee of council, set the mandate, set the terms of reference, appoint the individual councillors and members of the public. I have said before, I want to have a much more involved council and more open and transparent process. I don't think that having the mayor handpicking all of those is the best thing, but I want to stay within the procedural bylaws that we have before us. So what I have asked, and I sent the council a draft policy as a starting point to provide guidelines for appointing public members to ad hoc committees and standing committees where that's applicable. So in that case would be Heritage Board would be our only standing committee that has public members on it at this point in time in an equitable, accountable, and transparent manner. So what I did is I looked around at some other municipalities that have public appointment policies, sort of put that together, try to put a little bit, make it consistent with Summerside procedural bylaws. What I'd like to do is give that to our bylaws and governance committee to either throw in the garbage and start over, to revise, to totally change, but to give that committee, that standing committee, which is Councillor Adams and Councillor Cameron, the opportunity to review those guidelines and come forward with a policy that we put in place for the appointment of members of public to ad hoc committees here at the City of Summerside, so that we have a consistent process, so that we have an open process, so that we encourage involvement from members of our community to participate in committees which they're interested in or which they have a shared experience in, and so that we then have a process that flows more from council and the community and less from just the mayor. I don't want to just be picking people and putting them on committees. I want to find out who in our community wants to be part of things and make sure that they have an opportunity to add their voices, and that we have a consistent process across all committees. And there's certainly a number that I would like to get in place, and we'll be talking about those as we do our strategic planning, but I really wanted to make sure that we had this process in place first as much as possible. So I did send it by email, and I have hard copies here. If any councillor has any questions about it, basically I guess I'm asking you, council, to send that to Bylaws and Governance Committee for review, to come forward with a policy for public appointments to ad hoc committees here at the City of Summerside. That's it. So if anyone's happy with that, you can tell me. If you're not, you can tell me. But if everyone's quiet, guys, we have no idea what.
Sounds
what to
good.
do.
And Nick and I chatted earlier, and we just our work schedules, we worked that out, and we found the second Wednesday of every month we'll meet and review those, and we'll get Sandra to send out some appointments, and we'll go from there. Sound good, Nick?
Okay, any issues? Hearing none. Okay, and now we have our standing committees for finance, our standing committee for bylaw and governance, our standing committee of planning board, which will also then do the planning policy piece, are in place, and then our priorities and planning group is going to set a schedule for August, and those will be then our standing committees of council, and then hopefully we'll be able to take items that come through committee of the whole, send those to council, to the committees, get their expertise on it, like we were talking about transit earlier today, and then come back to council for decisions, so we can make sure everyone has the opportunity to contribute and move things along as quickly as possible. So thanks, council. That is the end of our committee of the whole meeting, so I will adjourn that meeting. Our next meeting starts 2 minutes ago, which is our special council meeting, so perhaps we'll open the doors, take a very brief recess, and then continue with that. So this meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much. All right, I think we will try and get started here. So if I could ask councillors to grab their seats. Awesome, that was great. We're in our second meeting of the night. Our first meeting was a committee of the whole meeting. That has concluded. We're at our second meeting, which is, I will then call to order the special council meeting of the Summerside City Council for July 4th, 2023 at 6:11 p.m. I will first call for a motion to approve the agenda as presented. Councillor Adams, seconded. Councillor Snow, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay, we will proceed with the agenda as presented. Just for one general note to the public, we always do a land acknowledgement. We did our land acknowledgement in the first meeting. We do one a night. And I would then ask any conflict of interest declaration from any councillor with respect to anything on the agenda. Hearing none, we will move into item 4. Just before I do that, just welcome, as I always do, all the members of the public who are with us in person and virtually on YouTube, and any members of the media who are also here with us today. It is always good to see democracy in action, even if sometimes it can get a little bumpy. We'll move on to item 4, which is 87 Ottawa Street, a restricted use application. And Councillor Duran, you will carry this one forward, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. Somewhere in the room, there's an applicant for 87 Ottawa Street, wondering why all these people are here, but we'll cover that. So, background. An application was received from Hegia Holdings, Inc. for 87 Ottawa Street, PID number 319285. This application requires council approval to allow a child care facility large as a restricted use in the light industrial M1 zone. The applicant is proposing to renovate the main building on site for the proposed restricted use. The existing main building is occupied by a number of small businesses. Child care facility means any facility where child care is licensed by the province of PEI under the Child Care Facilities Act. Large child care facility means a building used for the care and supervision of 16 or more children for compensation, but shall not include overnight accommodation and shall not be a public or private grade school. And there is a layout of the site plan on Ottawa Street and the existing building renovation plan and the proposed addition plan. The application was advertised in the June 2nd edition of The Guardian, and letters were mailed to property owners within 60 meters or 200 feet of the subject properties. Comments and questions. I would at this time invite the applicant to make any comments or to present anything they'd like to present. Paul Jenkins and Patty Gallant will be the representatives.
Your Worship, councillors, we operate Tiny Tots Daycare on Prince Edward Island.
I can hear you.
Can you hear me okay?
I think there's a little switch there. You just have to.
Testing. There we go. Thank you. We operate about 350 early years center licenses on Prince Edward Island. Patty is our director here in Summerside. She's at 382 Duke Street, of which we have 50 kids enrolled. We're looking to expand. Currently, Patty has 360 people on her wait list for spots. We've been looking for a property to expand in Summerside. We approached the current owner of the 87 Ottawa Street. He's agreed to sell. We would take over, proceed with the renovations and expansion, and move from 50 spots to 121 early years spots. We would just be seeking a restricted rezoning for the existing building, not for the property itself. And we're here to answer any questions.
So how many children would you be able to take on?
121.
100.
The province is changing the legislation this fall to allow up to 125 in centers, but you're limited by space requirements. It was measured by fire, and fire says that we can have 121 children. So each section will add different amounts. You're only allowed 12 infants, so we'll go up to 12 infants, et cetera.
And is that like a before and after school too, Patty, or is that's just straight days? Yeah. Okay, awesome. Well, thank you.
So the drop-off will be the question was, where will the drop-off be? There will be 2 different drop-off areas. one directly off Ottawa Street at the front of where Noy Enterprises was, and a second drop-off in behind in the blue section at the back. And that's just to disperse the traffic, so there's not as much traffic coming onto Ottawa Street at the same spot.
Sorry, I'm just going to quickly interrupt you folks, just because we have a process for the meeting. So the public is invited to make comments on this, but as we always do, if any member of the public wants to make comment or ask questions, they should approach the mic once the applicant is completed. State your name and civic address for the record, and then you can proceed with a question to the applicant. We can't take questions from the gallery.
Sorry about that.
No, council still has questions here?
Yeah, just a question, I guess, regarding the size, and that's fantastic, 121. Is that like, is that generally the amount of spaces that would be in a building of that size? Like, it'll be a good ratio to, I guess,
It meets all the.
not gonna be crammed in there.
No,
No, that's what I
there's
meant,
lots
yeah.
of natural light.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
windows in every room. Lots of, as you can see, if you looked at the plans, there's lots of washrooms. We more than meet the criteria for
Yeah.
washrooms to children. There's dedicated staff areas and kitchen that meet the environmental requirements. And out back, there's going to be a large play area for the kids. Of course, all fenced off and safe.
Looks great.
Hi, Paul, Bruce here. I was just wondering about the secondary building there. Is that involved with any of this?
The building at 89, Bruce?
Yeah, I guess it is, right there, yeah.
Yes, no, that's not going to be part of the child care.
Okay.
That will just be storage for the
Okay.
facility.
All right, thank you.
Hi, Paul and Patty. I have a question around the hours. When you had indicated like about the drop-off area, I'm wondering, are you going to serve, say, regular hours? But my question to you would be, will you be offering any services, say, for example, shift workers? We're trying to have a lot of retention for nurses and doctors, and sometimes that's a factor. Would there be anything like that offered to parents?
We'll be open from 6:30 to 5:30 like we currently are.
Okay.
Monday to Friday.
Okay. But not shift work, like say when people work a day shift, a night shift, nothing like that?
No, that's been tried in other centers and it never went over with them, so, yeah.
First, thank you, Paul and Patty, for increasing the childcare spaces in our city. How many children did you say again are on a waiting list?
360.
That's crazy. So it's really needed within our city. It impacts everything from jobs to people wanting to move here to basically everything. So unfortunately, my kids are all grown and not needing it anymore, but I can't imagine being a new parent and wanting to or having to find childcare in order to go to work. So thank you for that. The plan looks well from what I see, so just interested to hear any comments or concerns from the public.
Okay, if there are no other comments from council, we'll certainly open the floor to the public. If anybody has any questions or concerns they'd like to run by the applicants, and I'll just remind everyone that this is for this application and not the next one. So, and if you could just state your name and address for the minutes.
Debbie Young, 90 Ottawa Street. I actually live right across from the building, and I'm just kind of concerned about the heavy volume of traffic. I know there's a need for a daycare, which we really need in this town, but just out doing some lawn work in the past few days, and the traffic is high speeders go by all the time. It's just, I'm very concerned about that, like drop off for kids, it's very close to the road. We don't have a sidewalk on either side of the street where I'm at, and that's just some of my concerns. And I can see it would be safety, like if they dropped off it back, but I just have some concerns about the front part because it's very close to the road. And like, is there going to be a lot dropped off at that time? I have to be to work too for 7, and if there's high traffic area. That's just some of my concerns.
And I should also mention that if there's any questions that can't immediately be answered by the applicant in terms of maybe traffic counts or road capacity, that sort of thing. This will be going to the planning board meeting on July 11th. So staff will, any questions that can't be answered this evening will be answered on July 11th. So. But if the applicant knows answers to any of the questions, we're certainly free to cover them now.
No, I don't have any particular answers to you to the number of kids. It will be more traffic, but maybe we can work with the city on speed bumps to slow people down and possibly future planning for sidewalks, which would be great for the early years center because the Heather Moyes Park is just up the road within walking distance and it'd be a nice safe transition point.
Okay, anyone else? And like I said, this next step in this process will be planning board meeting on July 11th at 5, and then the final decision will be at the regular monthly council meeting on July 11th at 6:30. And what did I say? Monthly meeting is the 17th? Did I not say the 17th? 11th? I didn't have the thing on my 7. There. July 11th is the planning board meeting. Okay. Okay. It's Tuesday. Okay. I'll go over just a brief explanation of the process now. In order to process a restricted use, the following steps are required. Step 1, the restricted use is read at a public meeting, and that step is taking place this evening. Step 2, planning board reviews the application and prepares a recommendation to council. Step 2 takes place at the planning board meeting, July 11th, 5 p.m. Step 3, the restricted use is read to be adopted by council. The resolution will be either carried or defeated by vote of council. Step 3 takes place at council's second meeting, July 17th, 6:30. Please note that in accordance with section 5.20 of the city zoning bylaw, any person who is dissatisfied by a decision of council in respect of the administration of this bylaw may appeal council's decision within 21 days to the Island Regulatory and Appeals Commission. And there is no resolutions for this application, so that is all that I have now, Your Worship, for Ottawa Street.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you for the comments from the public. Thank you, Paul and Patty, for your commitment to invest in Summerside, and particularly with young people who need places to learn and grow. We will move on to next item, which is item 5 on the agenda. We have A through K. Before we get started, it was mentioned to me that there may be people interested in addressing council here tonight. As council would know, and maybe members of the public don't, generally in this part of the process that does not occur, but within our procedural bylaws, the chairperson, who is me, with the approval by resolution of the members, which is council, may authorize a person in the public gallery to address members only on the topic being discussed at that time and within the time limits specified by the chairperson. That is open at any point in any council meeting, so I would just sort of put that out there to members of the public and council. I would sort of maybe suggest that if council wants to consider that, if there is anybody at that point, that we do that after council have provided their overall comments, but I leave it. I wasn't finished. Then maybe we let council provide their comments first. But if there is someone here who wants to come first, I sort of will put it out to council to consider.
2 things, I guess. We have a policy in place, and I believe they're probably in place for a fairly good reason. I expect legal counsel would advise against it for a number of reasons. Unless there was something significantly new to be added. I'm sure every other councillor here has received lots of emails. I think we understand the position very well of some members in that area, for sure. So, Gordon, if you have anything on an advice standpoint that you would give, should give, in regards to the process?
So
It's
the
just, sorry,
Yep.
it's just, I know we've ran into this many times in the past, and we've
Yeah.
followed the process for specific reasons, so.
Right, so there is a process is laid out in the Planning Act, the PEI, and the Municipal Governance Act, and that process includes, well, a couple things. All the meetings that council has, whether they're council meetings, planning board meetings, committee meetings, they're all open to the public. Open to the public does not necessarily mean that the public is invited to bring comment or participate in all those meetings. For rezoning applications such as this, the first meeting of council is the opportunity for members of the public to speak. As you all know, council, we try to follow the rules as laid out in order to protect the decisions that you make from being overturned if appealed. As was just noted in the previous agenda item, all decisions of council under this zoning bylaw are appealable to council, so my advice would be to follow the agenda this evening, which does not include comments from the public, and proceed with your resolutions as noted on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. So I get this, at this point, hi, Steph, you're gonna put in the request, I'm assuming, so we can put in the request? You can ask.
Stephanie Betts of 188 Linda Drive. We did receive that this afternoon at 3:30, the warning that perhaps we shouldn't be speaking, which is different than the message we received last Wednesday evening. So we decided we would like to continue, and Paul Campbell will be speaking for us if that is all right with you guys.
Okay, so, again, how this proceeds and, is that this goes to, if somebody is putting a request to speak, it goes to a resolution for council to vote on. And council then will decide whether, and that would be on a one-by-one case basis, and then it would fall on me to set a time limit for that. The one thing I could put this also out to council, if you want to consider that, there's no point in the process. If you want to consider that now, or if you want to make general comments now, it is up to you, folks. Might as well consider it now since it's on the floor.
I'll just speak, I guess, as a representative of the area. I'll, if and when it comes time to take if it's a vote or a consensus, I'll support allowing it.
All of us say?
Yeah, I have to, with the approval of a resolution by the members. So perhaps can have Councillor Don put a resolution on the floor to allow, sorry, Steph, who was the first person? Who was requesting to speak? Was it you?
For Paul Campbell.
So Paul Campbell is putting the request to speak. Okay, so the
I'll move that
resolution will be moved by Councillor Duran to allow Paul Campbell to speak before council, and then that will go to a vote of councillors. So all in favor of the proposed resolution, say, oh, you need a second, sorry, my bad. Seconded by Councillor McDougall. So all councillors in favor of allowing a representative to speak, please say aye. Okay, we'll do a raise of hands. 1, 2, 3, 4. All those opposed? Yeah, so I will vote in favor of allowing someone to speak, but I'm going to put a short time limit on it of less than 5 minutes. Okay.
I guess I better speak quickly. 2 hours to 5 minutes. No, I'm only kidding. Mayor Kutcher, ward councillors, technical services, our development officer. I believe we have police services here. ZNC Flourish International representatives, and our gallery this evening.
I'm not quite sure how I became the person speaking to you all tonight. Maybe I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. But I nonetheless hope that I can adequately convey a clear message both to all of you, and for all of you. I fully understand that some of you in the gallery may leave here this evening thinking, oh, I wish he had have said that. And maybe I will miss some things, but please know that I'm trying to impress upon the council your resounding opposition to much of the rezoning amendment submitted by Z&C. So I hope I can do you all justice. And to you, council members, it was a bit of a process, but thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. It is not my intention to stand here to teach you the ins and outs of how to make choices. You were all schooled in that process last week. What I'm here to do is to convey why voting no to all R4 zoning is the clear, necessary choice. The most important people in this space this evening, and no offense implied to council, in the various locations within this building is this gallery. I think it is very important to clarify that these folks are our community. Residents of all areas of Greenwood Drive, Pope Road, Maplewood Drive, Gavin Estates, McDougall, Renforth. These are the areas that form our community. In fact, we have very concerned residents here from all wards of our city and have either representation from or you have heard from residents living outside our city boundaries as well. Musqush, Travelers Rest, Bedeck, and yes, even Richmond. Our community is not defined by a street address or an artificial boundary of 60 meters from the requested zoning application. It is defined by these people, those that live here and make use of the streets, lands, park. We have folks who routinely travel to this community daily, caring for their grandchildren, visiting loved seniors residing off of Pope Road, working in the area, running errands, enjoying various forms of exercise, or coming to take in a game at the Dome or Credit Union Place. All of us, those who've entrusted you with making informed and planful decisions, have a direct and significant interest in this community and ultimately this rezoning proposal. So I'd like to take, briefly, comment on this rezoning process.
I'm just going to interrupt you really quick because I did say 5 minutes. We're at 4 minutes. So if you can just move as quickly as possible, we can probably give a couple of extra minutes. But again, this process isn't this isn't normal course for the process at this point in time. I've tried to set a time limit on it.
I would say probably if I could have an additional 5 minutes, that would be sufficient.
I'll have to put that back to council. Sorry, we have bylaws, we have a process, we have policies. We have to follow those bylaws and policies and processes. If we don't, we have to follow our own policies and bylaws, or people can also question whether or not we follow the proper process. So I did suggest, say 5 minutes. If you want to ask for an extra 5 minutes, you can do so. I'll put it right back to council.
Well, to be on the safe side, Mayor Kutcher, let's say 10 minutes.
Okay, is there a councillor willing to put forward a resolution or a resolution for an additional 10 minutes?
I'll move it.
Is there a second?
No.
An additional 5 minutes if we can, but.
It's not the resolution. Come on.
No, the resolution is 10 minutes.
I just want to say something here. We have bylaws for a reason. We have to follow our own bylaws. We gave you 5 minutes. I think it should be 5 minutes.
So the resolution, Councillor Duran, do you want to put the resolution on the floor to put 10 minutes more speaking?
I'll move, yeah.
Do you have a seconder? Second by McDougall. All in favor, say aye. Raised hands. There's 3. The resolution is defeated. You have 1 minute left.
So, moving right along quickly, I want to comment on the zoning process. So by letter of May 31st, residents within 60 meters of the said land, and for those of us stuck with imperial measure, that's 196 feet, 10.2 inches. This artificial boundary, remember, our community is more than a street. They were invited to a public meeting where we were shocked at what we heard for the first time. There was confusion about not only the whole amendment process, but on what was actually being presented. And instead of providing insight as to what was being proposed, our ZNC representative gave public relations pitch about their copious projects completed to date. There was inadequate mapping, phases were unclear, housing costs were vague at best, and so on. And then at the second meeting, Special Counsel and Planning Board was stocked full of information, diligently prepared by technical services staff. Public questioning was prohibited, leaving all of us here tonight at meeting 3, awaiting a decision with limited time to speak. So we'll skip right ahead. How much time do I have, Mayor Stewart? Or, excuse me, Mayor Kutcher?
You've got very little time left. So again, I guess we're still waiting to hear what you're sharing with us.
Well, I'll go to the last point.
Thank you.
As we ask you to consider the existing challenges before adding more to the mix, the phrase, "don't bite off more than you can chew," seems appropriate here. You have all heard repeated safety concerns that are very accurate and legitimate for this area in its current state, let alone if apartment buildings were to be constructed. The added vehicular and pedestrian traffic stemming from R4 zoning and even new R1 and R2 development and the extreme duration of time it would take to build safe infrastructure do not align. It is factual. Cars, trucks, future heavy equipment, and pedestrians do not mix. And where does a new emergency circulation review fall into this? The intersection of Pope Road and Greenwood Drive needs reworking now. Sidewalks are needed now. These are existing pressing needs that should be addressed for the safety of young and old alike. These are not gifts to be offered as more R1 and R2 development is considered. These are needs now.
Okay, I think I'm going to go there. We are at 9 minutes. Council has approved 5 minutes, and I thank you for providing your comments here this evening.
Good evening, Mayor. I think, if
Sorry, before you
residents-
begin, we have the same process.
Yes.
I would have to request, do you want to speak to address
Sure.
council?
Yeah, my name is Jen Du from Charlottetown.
So
Yes.
Jen, we would need then a resolution from one of the members of council, put forward and seconded, moved by Councillor McDougall, second for 5 minutes. Is there a second from amongst the members of council? A second from Councillor Duran, so then I would call for a vote for council. All in favor of extending 5 minutes of speaking time? There being 4 in favor and 4 against, I will be consistent and also vote in favor for 5 minutes
I try.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you very much.
Um,
We will
Good
begin.
evening, everybody, especially Paul, thanks so much, for your report. Yeah, it's kind of like, whatever the result today, it's okay for us. Yeah, even from the very beginning, we already mentioned, we're here, we try to build a bigger community. Yeah, and we try to kind of like do something for here as well. So, and then I do have kids. I have 3 kids. You mentioned the schools, and for everything, that the road and everything is kind of, we've been there. Yeah, so totally understand. And also with the high interest rate and the high, inflation, everything you couldn't imagine, for developer, we're so kind of like, I don't know how to say it, but the word is kind of like, we're so proud of ourselves. Yeah, so we want to be here. We want to do something here. So we're here we want everybody to work together. It's not just, we're doing something and then made all of you so sad and don't like this place. We're here to kind of like, let's build, a better, community here. And recently we do have, we had several meetings with professionals, the engineers, and we know kind of like a couple of years ago, you've been even worried about, kind of like, you're going to need to close the school because you don't have enough kids, right? Yeah. But now it's kind of like you're worried about, we're going to have so many people, even we don't have enough space for kids here. So, and also, I'm not sure, right now it's kind of like your focus is more on the sidewalk and also green space here and there. But it's kind of like for the city, they do have a master plan. For example, for the sidewalk, and also I know it's kind of like in the near future, there's another, can store maybe on the other side. So they do have a bigger plan. Maybe you don't have enough information, so this is kind of, we could understand why you're worried. Yeah, so it's kind of like just to give a little bit time, right? Let's work together with the planning, with the city, and with us. Yeah, so eventually we want, this is such a beautiful, place. Last time when I left the meeting there, the lady just mentioned to me, but I just don't like that kind of feeling. It's kind of like she mentioned, yeah, kind of like, take this green space from us. No, we don't want to grab anything. Even we build homes here, we're not going to live here, right? Yeah, everything will be here. You're going to have a bigger community, and then you're going to have more people. And then for young people, you don't really need to pay much tax or something. You're going to have more, you couldn't imagine, for the future. Yeah, so we're going to bring something new, and we love to work together with everybody here. Even today, maybe you are here now, but later, maybe we're going to work together. And for the property management, for the construction, and for the material suppliers, we do need people from here, from local. Yeah. So this is what I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Du. So, no one else is at the microphone. It's great. I'm going to also mention something else because we're following the rules here today, and I have not enforced this in the past, but we're going to have a number of votes here today. It is really important to be respectful of this process and of council and the rules that we have to follow. So I'm just simply going to let the members of the gallery know some of the rules that we have here that, like I said, I don't usually speak about. Rule 22.1, which is all persons in the public gallery will refrain from addressing council and member of council unless permitted to do so, and we've done that, so thank you. B is to maintain quiet and order, and I know that has happened, and I know we have a very good community and people will do that. There's refrain from disturbing the proceedings. I don't expect that to happen. Refrain from talking on electronic mobile devices, and request that they are silent. Item C, the refrain from disturbing the proceedings by words, gestures, or actions, including applauding, displaying flags, placards, or similar materials. So as we go through a number of votes, I would just ask everyone to contain their excitement or disappointment, perhaps until the end, so that we can continue to follow the process that we are required to follow here as mayor and council. Now we will move on to the next item. Councillor Duran, it's back over to you.
Good to be back.
Thank you.
Okay, so I guess before we proceed with the resolutions, I will note that we have movers and seconders for all of them. I need to make it very clear that that doesn't necessarily mean that any of us are for or against. We simply need to move it and second it to get it onto the floor. So I went around the room earlier and got councillors to move and second, and myself, I did as well. So I just want to make it clear, both to folks that are here and also to my colleagues, that just because you're moving or seconding does not indicate that you're for or against. So with that said, Resolution COS 23-093, moved by Councillor Adams and seconded by Councillor Gallant. Whereas an application was received from Z&C Flourish International Limited for a zoning amendment for a portion of PID number 1163526 from single-family residential R1 zone to low-density mixed residential R2 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 0178A, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read a first time at the council meeting held on June 14th, 2023, and whereas in accordance with section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw, council shall consider the following general criteria as applicable: conformity with all requirements of this bylaw, conformity with the official plan, suitability of the site for the proposed development, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses, any comments from residents or other interested persons, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking and parklands for accommodating the development and any projected infrastructure requirements, impacts from the development on pedestrian or vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources, impacts on city finances and budgets, other matters as specified in this bylaw, and other matters as considered relevant. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 0178A, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby declared as read a second time. This bears the recommendation of the planning board meeting held on June 27th, 2023.
Council, you continue the second page, or do you want me to?
Schedule B?
Yep, the zoning amendment area 0178A, bylaw to amend.
Sure.
And then I'll call for the
Zoning
vote.
amendment 0178A, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. So this is Schedule B. The Council of the City of Summerside, under authority vested in it by Section 18 and Section 19 of the Planning Act, RSPEI 1988, Cap P-8, hereby enacts as follows. The zoning for a portion of PID number 1163526, shown on Schedule B of the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, is designated as low-density mixed residential R2 zone, hereby excluding it from its former designation of single-family residential R1 zone. And of course, the graphic there shows the layout of the proposed R1 to R2 amendment.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor, can you just repeat for me who moved that and who seconded that?
Moved by Councillor Adams and seconded by Councillor Gallant.
Adams, Gallant. Then with respect to Resolution COS 23093, moved by Councillor Adams, second by Councillor Gallant, I would call for a vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
One nay. Nay, Councillor Duran. 7 in favor. That motion is carried. Councillor, you want to move on to the next motion, the next resolution? Sorry, that resolution is carried.
Resolution COS 23-094, moved by Councillor McDougall, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Whereas an application was received from Z&C Flourish International Limited for a zoning amendment for a portion of PID number 1163526 from single-family residential R1 zone to low-density mixed residential R2 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 0178A, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read at 2 separate meetings of council held on different days. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 0178A, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby formally adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. So I will move towards a vote. With respect to Resolution COS 23094, moved by Councillor McDougall, seconded by Councillor Morrison. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Any opposed? One nay. Councillor Duran noted as nay. 7-1. Resolution COS 23094 is carried. Move on to next, Resolution COS 23095. Councillor Duran.
Resolution COS 23-095, moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Deputy Mayor Snow. Whereas an application was received from Z&C Flourish International Limited for a zoning amendment for a portion of PID number 11635526 from single-family residential R1 zone to high-density residential R4 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 0178B, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read a first time at the council meeting held on June 14th, 2023. And whereas in accordance with section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw, council shall consider the following general criteria as applicable: conformity with all requirements of this bylaw, conformity with the official plan, suitability of the site for the proposed development, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses, any comments from residents or other interested persons, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking and parklands for accommodating the development and any projected infrastructure requirements, impacts from the development on pedestrian or vehicular access and safety, and on public safety generally, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources, impacts on city finances and budgets, other matters as specified in this bylaw, and other matters as considered relevant. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 0178B, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby declared as read a second time. This does not bear the recommendation of the planning board meeting held on June 27th, 2023. And Schedule B, for zoning amendment 0178B, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. The Council of the City of Summerside, under authority vested in it by Section 18 and Section 19 of the Planning Act, RSPEI 1988, Cap P-8, hereby enacts as follows. The zoning for a portion of PID number 11635526, shown on Schedule B of the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, is designated as high-density residential R4 zone, hereby excluding it from its former designation of single-family residential R1 zone. And the plan is laid out graphically of the proposed R1 to R4 amendment, 0178B.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. Now I'll move to a call for a vote. So with respect to Resolution COS 230, Councillor McDougall, do you have a question?
I'd like to have a comment.
Absolutely.
I know this has been a long process, and I want to commend the residents in the area for their organization and the way they conducted themselves. I know it's been a tough on council. I do support the R2. However, going forward with the R4, I have some concerns around it. I have the issues around, the way the planning board, I believe we need to do some work around our zoning, I know we don't have an R3, but I think we're working on something. There's just got to be a better mix. I also was concerned, I think I asked the last time, around the comments from our city planner. I think should have been asked up front instead of later on in the process. So there's just, I think we need to do a bit of homework ourselves. and I know there's a great need for housing right across the province. There's an average, on the first 3 months, there's 24 people a day moving to PEI, and I don't blame them. Just, I've thought of this, I talked to a lot of people, and I had a lot of comments from residents. I've read every email, and I will not be supporting the R4. So I just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you, everyone. I know there was some refrain. Someone was, wait a second, we're not supposed to start. Any other councillor wish to share any comments at this time? Okay. We'll continue where I left off. I will move to call for a vote with respect to Resolution COS 23-095, moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Snow. All in favor? Say aye. Hearing none. All opposed? That's everyone. That motion is defeated. That resolution is defeated. Yes, Councillor McColeman? You opposed? Okay, thank you for letting me know. Councillor McColeman, take note, opposed?
Just, Your Worship, just for the record.
Yes.
It was everyone opposed, correct?
Wait,
Yeah, okay.
we, do you know what? Every single meeting, we go through this dance. The opposed, wait, were we saying yes to a no? All in favor, there being none. All opposed, there being all, including Councillor McColeman. Resolution COS 23, what number were we at? 095 is defeated. Councillor Duran, that does mean Resolution COS 23-096 is not applicable because there is nothing to formally adopt, so we can strike that from your book. So we'll move on to Resolution COS 23-097. Councillor Duran.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. And I think it all started when it was a vote. It said, all in favor of nay, say yay. And it just snowballed from there. Resolution COS 23-097, moved by Councillor McDougall and seconded by Councillor Adams. Whereas an application was received from Z&C Flourish International Limited for a zoning amendment for a portion of PID number 1163526 from single-family residential R1 zone to high-density residential R4 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 0178C, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read a first time at the council meeting held on June 14th, 2023. And whereas in accordance with section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw, Council shall consider the following general criteria as applicable: conformity with all requirements of this bylaw, conformity with the official plan, suitability of the site for the proposed development, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses, any comments from residents or other interested persons, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking and parklands for accommodating the development and any projected infrastructure requirements, impacts from the development on pedestrian or vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources, impacts on city finances and budgets, other matters as specified in this bylaw and other matters as considered relevant. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 0178C, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby declared as read a second time. This does not bear the recommendation of the planning board meeting held on June 27th, 2023. Schedule B, zoning amendment 0178C, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. The Council of the City of Summerside, under authority vested in it by Section 18 and Section 19 of the Planning Act, RSPEI 1988 Cap P-8, hereby enacts as follows. The zoning for a portion of PID number 1163526 shown on Schedule B of the City of Summerside zoning bylaw is designated as high-density residential R4 zone, hereby excluding it from its former designation of single-family residential R1 zone. And there is the layout depicted of the proposed R1 to R4 amendment 0178C.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. I'll now call for a vote with respect to Resolution COS 23-097, moved by Councillor McDougall, seconded by Councillor Adams. All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
Nay.
The nays carry.
Your worship, can I jump in for a second?
Yes, you can.
Resolution COS 23096, we should read and vote on those second resolutions, even though you voted nay on the first two, and I'm sorry, you and I had that discussion earlier, and voted nay on. I gave you bad advice. So it's better to get it correct here as we go along. The first resolution you're voting on is that it's being read a second time. So then zero, let's make sure we're right here. Resolution COS 23096. You should.
I'll just read that now then, so it's in the right
correct.
order. And
Read them again.
do you want me to reread 097?
Councillor, let's just finish the vote on 097.
Sure.
We'll jump back, do
that's
096, and we'll continue to 098.
Okay.
So to continue to put that vote out, I think I did, but with respect to Resolution COS 23097, moved by Councillor McDougall, seconded by Councillor Adams. All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
Nay.
All opposed? 8-0. That resolution is defeated. Now we'll jump back to Resolution COS 23096 under the advice of our CAO to make sure we have all of our I's dotted and T's crossed. Councillor Duran, we're jumping back.
Resolution COS 23-096, moved by Deputy Mayor Snow and seconded by Councillor Adams. Whereas an application was received from Z&C Flourish International Limited for a zoning amendment for a portion of PID number 1163526 from single-family residential R1 zone to high-density residential R4 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 0178B, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read at 2 separate meetings of council held on different days. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 0178B, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby formally adopted.
I will move to call for a vote with respect to Resolution COS 23-096, moved by Councillor Snow, seconded by Councillor Adams. All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
Nay.
That is an 8-0. That resolution COS 23096 is defeated. Councillor Duran, here we go. We're back on order. COS 23098.
Thank you, Your Worship. Resolution COS 23-098, moved by Councillor Cameron, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Whereas an application was received from Z&C Flourish International Limited for a zoning amendment for a portion of PID number 1163526 from single-family residential R1 zone to high-density residential R4 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 0178C, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read at 2 separate meetings of council held on different days. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 0178C, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby formally adopted.
I'll now call for a vote with respect to Resolution COS 23-098. Sorry, Councillor Duran, moved by
Councillor Cameron, seconded by Councillor Morrison.
Cameron. Okay. Moved by Councillor Cameron, seconded by Councillor Morrison. All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
Nay.
The nays have it. Resolution COS 23098 is defeated. Councillor Duran.
Resolution COS 23-099, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Gallant. Whereas an application was received from Z&C Flourish International Limited for a zoning amendment for a portion of PID number 1163526 from single-family residential R1 zone to high-density residential R4 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 0178D, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read a first time at the council meeting held on June 14th, 2023. And whereas in accordance with section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw, council shall consider the following general criteria as applicable: conformity with all requirements of this bylaw, conformity with the official plan, suitability of the site for the proposed development, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses, any comments from residents or other interested persons, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking and parklands for accommodating the development and any projected infrastructure requirements, impacts from the development on pedestrian or vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources, impacts on city finances and budgets, other matters as specified in this bylaw, and other matters as considered relevant. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 0178D, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby declared as read a second time. This does not bear the recommendation of the planning board meeting held on June 27th, 2023. And Schedule B, zoning amendment 0178D, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. The Council of the City of Summerside, under authority vested in it by Section 18 and Section 19 of the Planning Act, RSPEI 1988, Cap P-8, hereby enacts as follows. The zoning for a portion of PID number 1163526, shown on Schedule B of the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, is designated as high-density residential R4 zone, hereby excluding it from its former designation of single-family residential R1 zone. And displayed is the layout of the proposed R1 to R4 amendment 0178D.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. Same question, moved and seconded.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Glant.
And with respect to, now call for a vote with respect to resolution COS 23-099, moved by Councillor Duran, seconded by Councillor Glant. All in favor, say aye. All opposed?
Nay.
The nays have it. The resolution is defeated. Councillor Duran, back to you.
Resolution COS 23-100, moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Deputy Mayor Snow. Whereas an application was received from ZNC Flourish International Limited for a zoning amendment for a portion of PID number 1163526 from single-family residential R1 zone to high-density residential R4 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 0178D, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read at two separate meetings of council held on different days. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 0178D, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby formally adopted.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll now call for a vote with respect to resolution COS 23-100, moved by Councillor Adams, seconded by Councillor Snow. All in favor, say aye. Hearing none. All opposed?
Nay.
Resolution COS 23-100 is defeated. Councillor Duran.
Resolution COS 23-101, moved by Deputy Mayor Snow, seconded by Councillor Adams. Whereas an application was received from Z&C Flourish International Limited for a zoning amendment for a portion of PID number 1163526 from low-density mixed residential R2 zone to high-density residential R4 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 0178E, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read a first time at the council meeting held on June 14th, 2023. And whereas in accordance with section 5.7 of the zoning bylaw, council shall consider the following general criteria as applicable: conformity with all requirements of this bylaw, conformity with the official plan, suitability of the site for the proposed development, compatibility of the proposed development with surrounding land uses, including both existing and projected uses, any comments from residents or other interested persons, adequacy of existing water, sewer, road, stormwater, and electrical services, city parking, and parklands for accommodating the development, and any projected infrastructure requirements, impacts from the development on pedestrian or vehicular access and safety and on public safety generally, compatibility of the development with environmental, scenic, and heritage resources, impacts on city finances and budgets, other matters as specified in this bylaw, and other matters as considered relevant. Be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 0178E, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby declared as read a second time. This does not bear the recommendation of the planning board meeting held on June 27th, 2023. And Schedule B, zoning amendment 0178E, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. The Council of the City of Summerside, under authority vested in it by Section 18 and Section 19 of the Planning Act, RSPEI 1988, Cap P-8, hereby enacts as follows. The zoning for a portion of PID number 1163526, shown on Schedule B of the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, is designated as high-density residential R4 zone, hereby excluding it from its former designation of low-density mixed residential R2 zone. And there displayed is the proposed R2 to R4 amendment 0178E.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. I'll now call for a vote with respect to resolution COS 23-101, moved by Councillor Snow, seconded by Councillor Adams. All councillors in favor indicate by saying aye. Hearing none. All opposed?
Nay.
Resolution COS 23-101 is defeated. Councillor Duran, back to you.
final resolution for Greenwood Drive. Resolution COS 23-102, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Morrison. Whereas an application was received from Z&C Flourish International Limited for a zoning amendment for a portion of PID number 1163526 from low-density mixed residential R2 zone to high-density residential R4 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas zoning bylaw amendment 0178E, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, was read and declared as read at 2 separate meetings of council held on different days, be it resolved that zoning bylaw amendment 0178E, a bylaw to amend the City of Summerside zoning bylaw, be hereby formally adopted.
Thank you, Councillor Duran. If you can repeat for me again who moved and seconded.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Morrison.
Morrison. Okay, I'll now call for a vote with respect to Resolution COS 23-102, moved by Councillor Duran, seconded by Councillor Morrison. All councillors in favor of the resolution? Hearing none, all opposed? Nay. Resolution COS 23-102 is also defeated. We're just going to continue. I'll just ask if members of the public don't mind just sitting tight for a minute while we finish up the meeting. It shouldn't be too long, I don't think.
This is just a simple reading
Okay,
of
it's
another
back to you,
recommendation.
Councillor Duran, another resolution.
Okay, and if I could, with your permission, Your Worship, just to provide a real quick explanation of why I voted nay on the first two, the R2. I just wanted, for the record, to state that the reason I did that was due to comments from residents, as well as at least what I perceived as impacts from pedestrian and vehicular safety. So that's why I was against those two at the beginning.
And Your Worship, may I say very quickly to the residents? Okay. Basically to the residents as well, the emails, the contacts around safety concerns for those areas. That was one of the biggest reasons why I did. I felt the families, it seemed very, very much a passionate concern, so that's why.
Your Worship, before we move on to the next one, I echo the same and the reasons for the decision. Something has been bothering me since last meeting, and Jen, I did hear what was said to you, and that did bother me. And as a city, that's not who we are. And anybody I know that's sitting behind you, that's not who they are. So I apologize for that being said.
Thank you, Councillor. And I'd also just take a quick moment to just thank everyone for taking the time out of their busy lives to play an important part in democracy and to engage with all of us and to share all of your comments and concerns. This process, as I said at the beginning, can be bumpy, can be difficult. There are certainly lessons to be learned for us with respect to how we go about the process as a whole. We as a city haven't gone through a lot of this before. We are into a lot of new territory. A lot of the policies and procedures and things in this book are, were put in place at a time when our city wasn't growing, and I'm happy that our city is, but we've got a lot of work to do together as a community, and I know how great this city is and how much we all care about it. So just thank you very much for all being part of it, sharing all of your comments and all of your concerns, and taking time again away from your families and friends and the things that you have to do here tonight to be with us to share that over the course of the number of meetings that we've had. And as well, obviously, thank you to anyone in our community who is willing to step forward with development plans and who wants to invest in our community. We certainly are open to investment, and we want people to play a part in that. And I think we need to look at, as a city, we need to take that as a positive. People want to be here. People like what we are doing here. And that's good, partly because of how great a place this is. So I wanted to note that as well. I'm not going to talk for half an hour today.
Can I say something?
Of course you can, Councillor Glant.
I wrote a bit of a sermon. Housing is not a luxury. It's a necessity, just like food, water, and clothes are. The city is growing, and so is the population. I would like to see, in the future, developments, some key points taken into consideration. Infrastructure, traffic safety, lights at intersections, sidewalks, water and sewer updates, maintenance, green space for families. But with any development, it takes time and money for it to happen. We live in the best place in the world, so I hope we can come to a common ground and work together.
Thank you, Councillor. We'll move on now to the last resolution of the night. Councillor Duran, it is back to you.
Okay, thank you, Your Worship. And like I said, this is fairly straightforward and should be no time. Resolution COS 23-103, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor McColman, whereas an application was received from Aaron Stavert for a development review for 281 Water Street, PID number 309690, in the Downtown D District 1 zone under the City of Summerside zoning bylaw. And whereas the applicant submitted the attached design, rationale, and drawings for 281 Water Street, be it resolved that the development review for the attached design, rationale, and drawings for 281 Water Street as per section 22 of the City of Summerside zoning bylaw be hereby approved. This bears the recommendation of the Planning Board meeting held on June 27th, 2023. And that letter was read into the minutes at the last meeting, so I think we can table those for tonight.
Yes, we can. I will now move to call for a vote with respect to resolution COS 23-103, moved by Councillor Duran, seconded by Councillor McColman. All councillors in favor of said resolution indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, resolution COS 23-103 is carried. With that, folks, we have the end of our night. I will now adjourn the meeting and try and catch the end of my son's baseball game. Thank you very much, everyone. Now you can do your clap.